Conversations from the Zoom Room.
All right, greetings, Bill here. Hope you're doing well. We have a fantastic new episode of Conversations from the Zoom Room for you today, featuring David Friedfeld, CEO of ClearVision Optical. David talks about why leadership matters, working from home, how consumers and retailers are faring as they reopen. He also talks about how COVID is going to forever change the rep and customer relationship. And last but not least, his background is the coolest. Enjoy this episode of Conversations from the Zoom Room.
But yeah, it's nice to see you guys, and I guess it's welcome to the Zoom Room.
That's right. We're happy to have you, and looking forward to having this conversation and learning a little bit about what you've been going through for the last couple of months. You know, it's been a wild ride for everyone, and I'd love to get your experiences around it.
Yeah, so, it has been a wild ride, and to be honest, it's something that I would say most CEOs have not been prepared for, most companies not prepared for, most employees not prepared for. So when I say most, I mean overwhelmingly most. We had a disaster recovery plan, which we dust off every couple of years, but nothing could have imagined what's happened here in what is now, I guess, week 10, if I remember correctly.
So I'm curious to know, when it hit, you guys are, obviously operating and doing a good job out of it, but what was kind of the conversations that you were having with your leadership team and the rest of the company?
I probably, like other people, look at this in a little bit of phases. So phase one was that let's react to what the situation is. And I would say that took us about 15 days. We're in phase two now, which is, okay, we're working remotely. We're doing everything we normally do. It's set up nicely. And then what we'll call phase three for me is June, July, August, when eyewear retailers and the medical side of eye care opens up. Mm-hmm. And now we see, here's what it's going to look like. Yeah. I say that because if anything changes, bigger clusters, bigger hotspots, second wave, that's all something we don't know yet. But as eyewear and eye care returns in June, July, and August, we'll have a very good idea of what it looks like. For me, that's phase three. Mm-hmm. Phase four is going to be after we get a feeling of what it looks like. And right now, we're not even yet, from a ClearVision standpoint, we're not yet in phase three, where everyone's kind of open.
You're laying out the phases like Fauci. You're a total expert on that.
When your company is learning how to be remote, literally, if you're driving equipment from place to place to place, if you're trying to figure out, can your staff work when they're watching their children? Do they have internet powerful enough to do their business? Those are all the things you're solving in that first 15 days. Once that's solved, once everyone has a chair that works for them, or a part of the house that works for them, then you move on to the next part. And it was very interesting for us, to learn how to do product development without product in your hand. To learn how productivity works. When do you take your breaks? How do you call people? What time do you start? Now that you're not commuting, what does that look like? How do you keep yourself physically active? How do you keep yourself emotionally and socially connected? That was all happening in that second phase. I would tell you now that, but for a few little items, the fact that everyone is remote at ClearVision, in fact, I would tell you I prefer it, but because it makes me better. I don't know that everyone else prefers it, but I do find it a very interesting experience. Really, I do.
So I'm curious, what would you say about your productivity levels overall across the company? Are you able to maintain? Does it decrease or is it increase with remote working?
I think for most people, I actually spoke to 3 people this morning before the call, and I asked them that very question. Do you feel you're more productive now compared to previously? To a person, they said at least as productive or more productive. So the next question is, well, gee, how is it that you're more productive? Almost everybody said, I'm not getting interrupted as much. I'm not getting someone stopping by my desk as much, at all. I'm not, people are willing to figure out things more.
And I'm also curious to know about, since you're on Long Island, right? You're in the hot spot. I mean, your office is miles from some of the biggest hotspots in the country. I mean, that's a whole different dynamic. So how did that fact affect the psyches of the
Well,
individuals?
It's interesting because when I was on the Power Hour earlier in the month of March, I think it was,
Yeah.
early on, Gary had the Power Hour, or maybe the first week of April.
That was
There's
good.
no question that because I was on Long Island and in New York, I could see that things were different from other places.
Mhm.
However, it becomes more impactful when you can look at numbers.
Mhm.
So I speak to Dr. Steve Cox in Uvalde, Texas,
Mhm.
which is 90 miles from San Antonio, and he's near the border there in near Mexico, the town of 40,000, and he tells me there's only 6 people that he's aware of, that have been reported that have had the COVID-19, and he hasn't heard much in the last couple of weeks since everyone is, shelter in place. I speak to one of the assistant deans at the law school I went to down in Virginia, and she says the same thing. In the small town, there's maybe 13 people. And I told both of them, I have more than 6, more than 13 in my own company that have reported positive.
Wow.
So you can talk about, and that's the truth. And we've attended funerals of people in the neighborhood. We know there's a certain percentage of people that will succumb to the disease over a period of time, and that becomes just a number. It's 100,000 now; it becomes 200,000 in the future. But it's different when it's one of the guys. Seriously, that it's one of the guys that you grew up with in this town, and your friends are friends with his kids. And now after the funeral, that kid, who's now 32, is having dinner with you, talking about how it was with his dad.
Yeah, totally.
It becomes very real.
Yeah.
And I think that's the part that many people that don't have that experience can't relate to. So I think in the New York area and some other areas that are, New Jersey, Connecticut, some others, New Orleans, Detroit, where there's high clusters, people see that very quickly. My concern is that this is like a balance between the economy and public health.
I mean, this is it's very real. Thanks for sharing that. I'm super sorry for the pain, and the grief associated with that. That must be really difficult. So I'm curious to know, as the country reopens, right, and you see all of these people out, right, and about. My niece was sending me videos yesterday from Brooklyn, and she was cruising around, and there's a fair amount of people out, right, and we're out here in Southern California. There's people on the beach, people at restaurants. I mean, I went by one restaurant yesterday as I was out riding my bike, and it was packed. The place was packed. There's no way they were observing distancing. So I'm just curious about your opinion on what's going to happen as a result of things opening.
Yeah, I think this again. There's so much. There's a lot of opinion out there as to how things will happen. My personal belief is that in many cases businesses which are being required to act a certain way, by either guideline or regulation, temporary as it is, businesses are going to set the tone for many places and how we act. That's number one. Sure. Number two, consumers will also start to set the tone. So let's use the example one. Costco is a great example of a company that reacted very quickly, very accurately first, and continues to do so in a very positive way. So, masks are required, 6-foot distancing is required, so forth and so on. You can line up outside Costco very early. They had people lining up 6 feet apart. I went to pick up some wine over the weekend. You're outside, they're registering how many people go in, how many go out, etc. So that's standard. Those are businesses impacting behavior. Now, consumers will also do it. Consumers will say, do I want to go somewhere? So when you do consumer survey, will you want to get on a plane and travel? The answer overwhelmingly right now, 2/3 say, no, I'm not. Even if I was capable or wanted to do it tomorrow, 2/3 of the people say, I don't want to get on a plane. You'll find more people saying, I will cancel vacation. More people will say, I'm going to cook at home. So the consumer is also part of this. There's at least 30 or 40% that I've read for eyewear, say, for example, or eye care, that say, I prefer to wait another month or two before I go back in. And then there's other people say, no, I'm happy to go back in tomorrow. So the consumer will also dictate what happens. And again, personally, I do believe, based on the fear that some people have of, what's going to happen in society, it will change the way that people work long term, and it may even change the way that businesses are going to react.
I've got a question for you, David, about our business in general. Like we work in a very unique industry. It's that intersection of healthcare and retail, which frankly I don't see in any other industry. So it presents lots of opportunities and lots of challenges also. And I know Clear Vision's always been a very innovative company. From like your 3D printing and some of the digital tools you guys are doing. Now, classically, a frame company, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you've got a sales force of people going out reps, with physical inventory and selling into retail locations. How's that impacting, and what are you guys going to do, to mitigate that going forward? Or are you going to make any changes at all?
Primarily, what we've seen is there are some retailers that would say, please conduct this sale the way we're doing it, via some type of video remote. There's others that have said, we'd like you to come in, but we're going to change the rules of engagement a little bit. Great. And then there's some that have actually said, we don't even need the video. We're going to work on some type of AI, we're going to give you some data, and then you should be able to fulfill our inventory needs accordingly. So we believe that there will be different ways of fulfilling inventory going forward. We've also heard from a lot of other frame companies, not only Clear Vision. That means not only Clear Vision believes this, but many frame companies are trying to figure out, how do we impact our customer a little bit less with the touching of inventory. So, it used to be that maybe the average retailer might have, between 450 and 800 pieces on the board. Some people might have less, some people would have more. But that inventory was touched by a lot of people, touched by sales reps, touched by dispensers, touched by consumers. Now, every time it's touched, clearly there's a potential for a virus to spread. And not only the virus we're talking about now, but many other viruses. And that's why I think this is a long-term deal, because it's really brought up, hey, there's a lot of things that get spread a certain way, which is on surfaces. Now, if that's the case, maybe the concept of reordering products when you need them, or drop shipping them to a lab, or like the Luxottica STARS program, or the Frame Dream program, or whatever other programs come up with different frame companies, they're going to be more utilized by the retailer, and that will change the way the dispensary acts. I also think that there's going to be more people might look to do more in-office edging, because now that profitability will become very, very important, and service will become very, very important. It always was important, but this elevates things very, very quickly. And so people might say, I want to have more control over the time, and I want to have more control over the quality, and I want to have more control over the price. So that can bring a lot more in-office edging into companies. And of course, there'll be some people that decide the opposite is better for them. They want to have less activity in the office, so they want to go to a lab now, where they maybe were doing that kind of in-office edging before. I think the dispensary side, the lab side will change a lot, and I believe most frame companies will end up on the same side. That means when I speak to other presidents of frame companies, there's no question we're all we're coming to the same position that the other guy's talking about. We're all talking about, how do we create safety? How do we create less interaction with the product? How do we show it differently? And that would even go into, educational videos, trade shows. Everything will change because of the way the product has to be touched. My head of talent and I were talking this morning, and she used a quote which I think is really appropriate for this discussion. She said, a lot of people want to spring back, right? They want to go back to what we just left.
Sure.
She said the advice that she's hearing is to spring forward. And forward is, it's a very interesting metaphor. No, don't spring back, spring forward. But it also means that you're not, in many cases, you don't know where you're going. I felt those first 3 weeks, Bill, I swear, I felt I was going down a steep ride with no lights, not knowing where I was going, not knowing where it was going to end.
Yeah.
And I just was on for the ride. I was holding on like a toboggan sled. And ultimately, when you got to the bottom and you understood you didn't crash, it was still dark,
Yeah.
but you were safe. Now we're on the other side of it. So I think it's very exciting. I tend to have a Jekyll and Hyde view of things, meaning two views. I'm optimistic for our industry. I'm optimistic for technology. I'm optimistic for the consumer. I believe the innovation is going to be crazy good in 2 years, not 10 years. It's going to shrink quickly.
Yeah, no
But I'm also fairly certain that the healthcare initiatives or the public health will be also very painful until people figure out what they're willing to give up and sacrifice. Because, as much as, California or New York or Utah or Texas or Georgia or Arkansas are all arguing a little bit about what should be done, the truth of the matter is, as I said before, it'll be business that decides and the consumer. Because if a consumer doesn't want to come into your restaurant, they're not going to come in until you figure it out. And if you don't treat your employees right in a restaurant, your employees won't come back to work.
Yeah.
So it's it's almost like we don't have a lot of control right now. The market is very much more in control than the consumer, let's say, and or the business leaders.
Conversations from the Zoom Room.